Hello there everyone, I hope that you're doing well and that you're having a good week. And welcome to this folder, the ILM Level 7 Assignment 1 folder. You'll see the resources in there and perhaps you've already had a look around and discovered what we've got. This video is a bit of a walkthrough, it's a bit of an explainer. We're going to spend most of the time talking through the answer book because that's where you're going to be doing the work. But also we'll hop into the other folders as well to give you a bit of a sense about what is there. So, you would have picked up already through the program that this piece of work is, I suppose, the biggest piece of writing you need to do during your program. It doesn't have to be very academic. We've explained before, it wants to have a conversational style to it. There is a bit of referencing needed, and when we say referencing, just referring back to whatever you've read and perhaps one or two quotes for each question, but no more. And we don't have to write it as if we're writing a thesis or a dissertation. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk through this answer book. This is where I suggest you write everything. There's lots of detail in this. I'm not going to read it out and repeat anything, but I'll just add a few bits in to flesh it out. This assignment is an opportunity for you to really share your learning and to encapsulate the reading and your understanding of coaching. And you'll see some notes about the word count. Please don't worry about it too much, and certainly don't edit it down if you've gone over it. That's not necessary. If you need more words, take more words. That's really important. The questions are always the official exact question that the ILM has asked, so you have that and we respect that. The guidance that we put in here for each of the questions here in grey or light blue are always our own guidance. It's what we think, our view. And it's only partial guidance. We can't tell you everything. We need to sort of give you a bit of freedom to be able to choose. But I hope that the guidance that we give gives you enough to be able to decide what to write. So let's walk through the questions one by one. Firstly, 1.1. And the language you'll notice, things like critically compare. So they want you to compare coaching and mentoring. Why would coaching or mentoring be offered at a senior level? Why would an organisation choose to have coaching as opposed to having mentoring, or the other way around? It's a good opportunity for you to write about both, do a bit of compare and contrast. Lots of people do tables comparing similarities and differences, and that's useful. And it probably breaks down into a couple of stages, into the whole stage of explaining coaching and mentoring, and then the next stage when you think about the organisation and the application and why they might use one as opposed to the other. And I think a key message to put here is it's not that one is better than another at any point. It's just that an organisation has worked out what works for them. So often mentoring works better in organisations because they're not quite getting round to coaching yet. They haven't quite worked out how to organise coaching, so they use the wisdom and the guidance of the seniors. But then sometimes coaching works really well because people are open to it, because it's already started to embed, because you've got some trained coaches. So thinking about, in a non-judgmental way, why organisations would use each. That's 1.1. 1.2, this is a classic bring a grid in. You see that there's 4 different aspects of what an organisation could consider in order to work out whether they are ready to have coaching. It does say coaching or mentoring. My suggestion is only 1.1 that you write about mentoring as well. From now on, just write about coaching. You don't need to carry on doing compare, contrast, coaching and mentoring unless you particularly want to. I've given a bit of guidance there on each of those 4 areas, but there will be wider than that. You can think about other aspects. You can think about, culture is such a wide topic. For example, like the ethos and the values and the sector that they work in and so on can come into it. And really, the critical review is all about trying to work out what organisations do well or less well to make these things happen. This is probably a really good one to go and read some sample essays to see what other people have written, because it can go so wide. 1.3, this is where we take a little step back from coaching, and I always enjoy reading this one because people write about what they know, and we see loads and loads and loads of benefits of other approaches, whether it is 360, whether it is training courses or shadowing, something like that. But we also see a recognition that there's some downsides to many other traditional learning and development methods. It's good to be able to write this to have an informed choice. I'm not saying that people always come out with the conclusion that coaching is better than all of the others, but often people are able to point out to the unique benefits of coaching that many of the other things don't have. One of the things that I think is nice is that you can reflect on some of these approaches that have worked well for you, and you can reflect on how coaching can be in harmony with some of those things. So, for example, training followed up by one-to-one coaching, that can work really well. That can be really supportive. Enjoy writing that one, a bit of time off coaching. And then 1.4, this is a bit of a mirror of what you'll see in section 3 here, which is thinking about the evaluation and the integration. So this is all about how do we get this coaching to work well. So for some organisations, they will go and get external coaches. They will let the senior people go and find their own coaches and not worry about it. Others, they will make it part of an L&D or an HR strategy to have it really organised, really systematically. That's important. You'll see loads of case studies of this. We've drawn some case studies that you'll be able to read, put into these folders. So thinking about different sizes of organisation, what works, what might work not so well. By the time you get to the end of section 1, you'll probably be like me and you'll need a cup of tea and a bit of a sit down. And then you can push it into section 2, and section 2 allows you to start thinking about yourself as a coach. Although you can write about it generically, this section is all about coaching practice, understanding the principle and practices. 2.1, it's a really good one to start writing during the program, but to finish when we finish the training. And if you look at it, knowledge, skills and behaviours and practices for being a good coach. Well, that's the whole of the course. I don't think you need me to say anything here. You know, you think about the skills you've learned, the skills you've developed, the skills you use in those coaching sessions. But it's a critically analyse. It's important. You know, why is listening such an important skill? Why is a pause such a powerful part of what we do? Why might it not be? It's really good to do that bit of critical analysis rather than just on an assumption. And it's probably things that you can draw on from your reading here. You would have read things that people would have written on all of these, as well as things that we've written. 2.2 allows you to look at a model and a structure, and as you'll know by now, we teach and use loads of structures, all based pretty well around that 3 or 4 part model. You can analyse that structure, and you can talk about each stage, and you can talk about what works in each stage and the risk if that stage not done well. If you want, you know, lots of people come to our training, they already knew OSCAR or GROW or FUEL or one of those other acronyms. If you want to do a compare and contrast with one of those other ones, that can be really interesting. We want you to, at this stage, really own your understanding of our structure, because at some point probably you'll work out and you'll develop your own, and this is a great springboard for that. So you've got your skills, got your structure. Now we think about post-coaching reflective learning. So the idea that you can write about your own reflection, and we design the course to build in reflective time and reflective opportunities. You can also think about the personal reflections that you've taken. Some people like to write about reflective learning cycles like Gibbs and Kolb and others, and that's absolutely fine. But it's fine to make this quite personalised, to think about the benefits, because you can make the direct correlation between your own practice and this reflective approach. So that's 2.3. 2.4 starts to think about something that's quite systemic, ethical practice. For this, we don't overtly teach ethics, but I think we look to draw from an ethical approach, and some of the work we do around goals and partnership, around agreeing to work in a certain way, and around not mixing coaching and mentoring. all go into the mix of what's good ethical practice. You will find here codes of ethics from most of the coaching bodies, and they're great checklists. You don't have to reproduce them here. But you can certainly use them as a way of really evaluating your own practice and seeing what is important about ethical practice. And I think as a quite new approach, and with lots of people coming to coaching not really understanding what coaching is, knowing that we're rigorous and we have an understanding of having a code of ethics, I think can be really useful. So this can be a very rich section. Last one here in section 2 is supervision. And again, during this program and carrying on now, you're going to be having supervision, have one-to-one tutorials with one of us. So you can write about supervision, and what this question encourages you to do is to really look at what supervision is. So you'll read about the 7I model, no doubt, or you'll read about the clear structure, and you'll read what people have written about coaching supervision. And it's useful for you at the moment because you are learning to coach well and you're using supervision. But also, a decent proportion of people we train at level 7 then push on to become supervisors themselves in 5 years' time or so. So this is a really good starting point for you thinking about yourself as potential future coaching supervisors. Particularly those of you who lead organisations and are introducing coaching and lots of coaches into the organisation. So that's section 2. Section 3 has only got 2 questions, and they are so similar that we say that if you want, you can look at the 2 together. So 3.1, thinking about evaluating the impact of coaching on the individual. And 3.2 thinks about evaluating the impact of coaching on the organisation. Some people really enjoy writing them separately, some will blend the 2, and it's really up to you. The individual, we've given some guidance here about the different types, and I think the important thing is having the pre and the post. The idea that we do something before the coaching and we do something after the coaching so that we can evaluate it well. And from the organisational perspective, that you have got some evaluation methods. There is something that can be used. There are some spiky articles in your folder about this. There's a great article that asks this wonderful question, what's better, a 10% increase on productivity or profit, or a 10% increase on happiness? It's not an answerable question, is it? Of course it isn't. So enjoy reading some of those things and bringing some of that into this section. So I've walked us through the whole of this assignment, this document. Let's come out of it for a moment and let's look at some of the other information you've got here. You have got some assignment 1 examples. My encouragement is, if this is the right thing for you, look at the standard ones and you'll see what makes a good pass, an absolutely fine pass. If you want to look at the outstanding or the awesome ones, be prepared, because these are people who have really put in such an effort and thrown the kitchen sink into it, and these are wonderful and joyous assignments, and they deserve to be well shared. But I really don't want you to read them and make them put you off and make you feel like, oh my goodness, I have to do as much as these. These are rare, and they're incredible assignments. But they're there because there's really good and rich stuff. And you're welcome to read something and borrow a reference or borrow a resource or enjoy a quote that they've read. That's absolutely fine. That's not plagiarism. You're picking up good, useful practice. The other thing you'll see here is the supporting materials. Loads of documents in here. Each folder has between 3 and 8 articles or PDFs or something of that nature. These are here to refer to. These are here to have a skim read. The codes of ethics, the ethical frameworks, the return on investment documents, and so on. You will find some things in here that will be useful. We could have filled this 10 times over. We just put in enough to make sure that you've got some extra resources. So if you haven't read widely, everything that you will need will be in here. So check in with yourself. How do you feel? How do you feel when we have got to this stage of getting ready to do your assignment 1 work? I hope that this video makes you feel more confident and feel like it's within your gift. I really think that a great benefit for having this assignment broken down into these questions is you can do one at a time, right? You don't have to try and sit down and do the whole lot, and you can enjoy taking a question at a time. You can submit one at a time, and we'll mark one at a time. It's absolutely fine. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the reading, enjoy the planning, enjoy the writing, and of course, have a good day and happy coaching.